Welcome to the Half Empty, Half Full Consumer Advocacy Radio Show. Listen in nationwide on the Tan Talk and Starcom radio networks with your host, Lori Zook, the consumer champion. Each week, we'll be discussing problems and solutions, changing negatives to positives, and helping you, the consumer, to learn something new. Get smarter faster and avoid scams and fraud. All opinions are that of the host and guests, and all shows are for educational purposes only and not to be construed as legal advice. Here's your host, Lori Zook.
And welcome to the show. Each week, we'll be discussing problems and solutions, changing negatives to positives, and helping you, the consumer, to get smarter faster. My guests today are Ken Bruning. He is the General Sales Manager for Ford and Mitsubishi of Port Richey, and Ed Sobolow, who is from Wesley Chapel Nissan. And we're going to be talking about what you as a consumer need to know about purchasing a car. I want to welcome you guys both to the show. And Ken, can you share with our listeners a bit about yourself and your background?
Actually, I've been in the automobile industry for 14 years now. By trade, I'm a chef, and now I'm actually a foster parent who has 6 kids.
Wow, okay, very good. And Ed?
I've been in the car business for 35 years, several different positions, managing dealerships, selling cars.
Okay.
And I live here in Zephyr Hills with my wife, Linda.
Very good. All right, well, I'm glad to have both of you with me today. We're going to jump right into researching cars and internet marketing. Now, what is a good way for a consumer to research cars as far as price range, vehicle models, and options and so forth? Ed, I'll start with you.
Well, the best way to get all that information these days is the internet. That's got loads of information out there, various websites, either manufacturer websites, where you can get a lot of feedback and a lot of information about the vehicles.
Okay, and Ken, anything you want to add to that?
The same thing. You know, most people now are going on the third-party sites and then also visiting the local dealership websites as well.
Now, is price the biggest thing that people still look at when they're purchasing a car?
Typically is.
Okay. Do most consumers want more car than they can actually afford?
Always. It always seems to be that. They always like the loaded up models, all the features, all the new features and all. But many times it just doesn't fit their budget.
Okay. How can people stay within their budget? I mean, if you have somebody that's coming in and they say, oh, I want that really pricey model, what do you do?
Basically $20 per thousand. So if you're looking at a $20,000 car, it's going to be $400 a month. So if you use that guideline, then you can pretty much gear yourself to the right vehicle.
Okay. Do you guys have to educate people when they come in and first are maybe in the preliminary stages of looking at a vehicle? You know, rather than just, do most people just walk in and say, I want that car, and then, hey, can't afford it? Or do you have to qualify them when they're first coming in?
Well, what I look to do is get a bunch of information of what they're looking to do, what they're looking to accomplish, what type of budget that they do have, what kind of car they're driving now. Okay. All this helps me determine what kind of car I can get them into and how I can get them into more car for the least amount of money.
Now, do people sometimes come in and say, I want that car, but then you're trying to figure out, well, maybe really that's not a good car for what they need?
Yeah, that happens all the time. What I like to do is actually find out their total income, and 15 to 18% of that income should go to a car. Any more than that, the banks are not going to budget for it. Therefore, they're not going to get the loan. Okay, now
that's a good number to know because it sounds almost like a mortgage. You have to determine a certain percentage. So the same thing with a car.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Okay. Tell me about emotional needs when it comes to a car purchase. You know, do people come in and go, wow, that's the car for me? You know, I've got to have that car. What are the emotional needs about?
Well, many people, of course, like what they see when they see in a particular vehicle that really excites them and all, and the equipment.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Ken?
You know, buying a car, it's all about emotions. If somebody is really enjoying that vehicle or smelling the new car smell, everything kind of trickles down from there to where they start seeing themselves driving the car and owning the car, and then they take possession of it mentally.
All right. Let me ask you another question. How important is the color of the car, as silly as that might sound? Do people come in and say, I want it in a certain color? Because I'll tell you, when I bought my car, I wanted bright blue. When I drive down the road, you're going to know it's my car. Whereas most colors of cars seem fairly conservative. Do most people come in and just doesn't really matter the color?
For myself, it's probably 50-50. A lot of people come in and they'll want a certain color, but then they'll leave in the opposite color that they came in for.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the test drive, because I think that's very important. Do the majority of people go for a test drive? Do you guys take them for a test drive when they're interested in a specific car?
Yeah, in my dealership, we only take people for a test drive, and we've actually got a route that takes them off of like 19 or anything like that. So it's a little bit easier for them to kind of own the car and want to drive the car. All right-hand turns, therefore you don't have to go across traffic and worry about somebody else coming head-on or anything.
Oh, interesting. That's kind of a good factor right there. All right, Ed, anything to add to that?
Test drives are very, very important to ownership of a car, because if the car doesn't handle right for you, if it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't fit right, it might be the wrong car.
Right. I think back to when maybe 3 years ago I was looking to purchase a new car. And I went to a bunch of different dealerships, and I test drove several. And it was interesting because the handling in the cars, now keep in mind, I have not purchased a car for many years until I purchased this car. Some of them, they handle very loosely in the steering wheel, and other ones are very tight. I guess that's more sports oriented.
Absolutely.
So different cars handle differently, and that would be a good reason for test driving, correct?
Of course.
Okay. Now, when they come in and they want to buy the car, what about car insurance? How do you determine if you've been driving an old car and your insurance probably isn't that much, and now you're going to buy a new car? Are they prepared for the car insurance costs? Is that something that comes into concern for you when they're purchasing a car from you?
Well, the big thing was that previous car that they had, was it paid off? Did they have full coverage insurance?
Okay.
If they did not have full coverage insurance, then that cost is going to go up. But then again, all the safety features of a car these days, it's actually going to drive that cost down.
Okay. Anything to add?
Yeah, I was just basically going to say the safety features on the vehicle can surprise you, because from the older car that you might have been driving could be actually less expensive to drive a car with the newer safety features on.
All right, well, tell me about that. What are the newer safety features? I mean, when I had an old car, it didn't have a lot of safety features. Nowadays, though, what's included as far as safety features?
Well, of course, airbags, anti-lock braking systems are very important. Nissan has a thing called vehicle dynamic control, which prevents the car from slipping out. And just the safety and the way that a car can handle a crash, God forbid,
Okay.
can lower that insurance for you.
And how have cars changed maybe in past years, maybe back from the 80s and 90s, safety-wise? What were the major changes?
You know, now you've got crumple zones, you've got pre-tensioners on seatbelts, so when you get into a wreck, the seatbelt actually cinches up on your chest. Airbags on your knees now. I mean, there's a lot of different safety features. But the crumple zones on the front, absorbing all that impact, is probably the biggest thing.
Now, when somebody purchases a car, does it tell them on the dealer ticket, I guess on the car, does it tell them what the safety factor crash rating is?
Yes, it does. On
Okay.
the Moroni label.
Okay. All right, very good. We were talking a little bit about features, options, and safety, but what about fuel efficiency?
Of course, fuel efficiency always comes in play. You could actually have more car if you're getting better gas mileage, because you could afford it, because
Right.
the monthly payment's going to be lower.
Right. It's interesting. When I purchased my vehicle, I had an SUV that got probably about 10 miles to the gallon, which, when you're driving, that's nothing. I mean, that's bad. Nowadays, though, I've seen, like the car that I have now, it shows me the digital dashboard, so it actually shows me the mileage. So I want to ask Ken, technology-wise, what things have changed? Because, when I purchased my car, it had Bluetooth, and I went, wow, I can, talk on my cell phone in the car. I'm sure a lot of my friends were laughing. But years ago, you didn't have that. So what are some of the major technological features that you can get on a car?
One big thing is backup cameras. It's actually going to be standard that all cars have backup cameras soon. Navigation is a big thing. A lot of your Bluetooth will send all your music from your phone into the car. So there's a lot of features that the technology, the savvy customers now are wanting to stream everything into their car.
Now, what about Well, do you think it'll ever come down to where a car will have some type of a safety feature where if you're too close to another vehicle while you're driving down the highway? I remember years ago reading about that. Is that something that will happen?
It's already there.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Many cars are coming out with features that'll prevent you from getting too close to another vehicle. If you're on cruise control, that automatically slows you down. There are many features that tell you if people are in your blind spot, if you're drifting out of your lane. There
okay.
are cars that are automatically going to brake for you to help prevent a collision.
So the cars are becoming smarter, in essence.
There's cars that are going to be driving themselves. That's already been tested here in Tampa.
Really? Now, tell me about that, because I thought that was a great idea. Again, read another article about it. What's happening with that?
Well, from the use of radar and sonar in the vehicles, it can actually recognize where the vehicle is. Through satellite GPSs, it could recognize any collisions that it's coming to. It could brake itself, it could start itself, it could drive itself.
Sounds like a good idea, especially maybe for people that are elderly that get in a lot of car accidents. If the car would drive itself, then
Sure.
you'd probably have less accidents. Now, would that system work only if everybody else has the same car, or would it work just within that car?
Yeah, it would have to be something where pretty much,
Everybody
a
had.
lot of cars out there. You can't have one car.
Ford actually has a car that does that. Adaptive cruise control. You can hit the cruise at 100 miles an hour, and if you're in traffic that's 50 miles an hour, it'll slow down and speed up as you go along.
Yeah, our new Murano coming out has that. I just saw that yesterday when Nissan brought that out for us to check out. That's an awesome feature.
Wow, okay, technology with the computers is really taken over, because I remember having a car back in the 70s that my friends laughed. It would fall apart as I was driving it, literally.
Yeah, lucky to have a seatbelt.
Yeah, exactly. Now everything's working much better. We're going to take a quick break, and we come back. We're going to continue on with cars.
Time after time, I've done my sentence, but committed no crime. And bad mistakes, I've made a few.
Consumers, do you have bad credit? Can't purchase a house or car? Paying too much in interest on your credit cards and loans? Scammed by credit repair companies? There is hope. You can get back on track and do it the right way. Call Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Or go to crediteducationconsultants.com now and get the help you need. Don't delay. Call today. Mortgage reps and realtor inquiries are also welcomed.
Hello, I'm Jim Velasquez. Does getting a lousy 1% on your CDs make you sick to your stomach? Inflation is hovering at 3%, so what's really happening? Allow me, Jim Velasquez, to send you my free report. If you haven't reviewed your CDs in a while, don't get this report. It will break your heart. If you want to fight back and beat the bank, text RETIRE to 72727 for this free report. Let's beat the bank. Text RETIRE to 72727 for your free report.
Paid my dues, time after time. I've done my sentence, but committed no crime.
And welcome back to the Half Empty, Half Full Talk radio show. I'm Lori Zook. I'm here with Ken Bruning and Ed Sobolow, and we're going to try and teach you what you as a consumer need to know about purchasing a car and being smart and savvy about it. This way you don't get ripped off. Now, I want to jump into this segment and talk about financing, because that's a big thing. First off, you have to purchase a car that's within your budget. Now, Ken, repeat and tell me, what was the percentage of your income?
It's going to be 15 to 18% of your income.
Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of what you can really afford to do. Most people don't go out and just buy a car for cash, do they? A very small percentage, maybe?
Small percentage does.
Okay, so how important is good credit to purchasing a car, or nowadays can anybody be financed?
Well, of course, the better the credit, the better the interest rate's going to be, and the lower your payment's going to be. However, people with challenged credit could still buy cars today, too.
Okay. Well, Ken, if they have challenged credit, how much higher do the interest rates run? Is it considerably?
It's quite a bit higher. You know, you can get into a brand new car with good credit and get 0% or 1.9, something really low. If it's bad credit, the state cap is 16.78. So that's a big jump.
Yeah, but at least there's a maximum on that. Do most people put, if they don't have a trade, do most people put down a fairly decent amount on the car, or they don't have to put anything down nowadays?
It all depends on credit. You know, if it's credit challenged people, they might have to put down a couple $1,000s. If you've got good credit, you don't have to put down anything.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, you guys are from two different dealers. Can dealers be competitive with banks that offer car financing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the dealer themselves generally doesn't finance the vehicle. They use banks. They use the manufacturer's bank, like in our case, Nissan Motor Acceptance Corp. And they're very competitive, if not lower, than many of the outside institutions.
Okay, so when you finance with Nissan Motor, it's a separate division. In other words, Nissan owns their own bank, and Ford has their own bank.
Yeah,
and
they've got
that's
their own
how it
lending as
finances. Okay. Are there special deals for financing through dealers that banks don't offer?
There can be. You know, typically a bank is, or a dealership is going to do millions of dollars a month with a different bank. So they may get preferred lending with that bank just because they do so much volume with them.
Okay, anything to add?
Well, there's also 0% financing available on some vehicles that you can't get at a bank. Sometimes you can get 0.9%, 1.9%.
Okay. Does that run, is that a special that runs, or is it a consistent?
Those would be specials, basically done through the manufacturer.
Okay. How do you determine when leasing is better than financing?
Well, of course, there's many factors you have to look at. You have to look at how many miles per year that the person might be driving. You have to look at things like what condition they keep their cars in, because those are all going to come into play later on. Leasing is, you're only paying for the part of the car that you're using. You're not paying for the whole car. And then at the end of the lease, you don't have to worry about resale value or trade-in value. You don't have to worry about, you just get into another lease.
So when somebody comes in and they say, well, I'm not sure if I should lease or purchase a car, how do you help them determine that? I mean, I'm thinking if somebody has a business and they're doing X amount of miles, can you help them determine which option is better for them?
Definitely. It's also about trade cycle. If you get a new car every 2 or 3 years, then it'd be better off to lease a car. That way you're not paying for the whole price of the car, and then you have negative equity at the end of the lease, or at the end of the purchase.
Okay. Can people still purchase the car that they're leasing if they decide they want it? Is there any advantage or disadvantage to doing that?
Well, you can buy the car at the end of the lease. Many people do that. However, with specials and all that, a lot of manufacturers have special programs and all that to keep their people from one lease into another.
Okay.
Sometimes even being able to get them out a little bit earlier, and other incentives to keep that customer into getting into another lease.
All right. Now, do you guys find that customers who like a particular model, they like Ford or they like Nissan, do they come back and like to get the next, people have cell phones and they have the iPhone 4 and then it's the iPhone 5 and then it's the iPhone 6. Do they do the same thing with cars?
I see that quite frequently. People that are very loyal to the brand, they haven't had any problems with the vehicle. They enjoyed that one. And once again, manufacturers sometimes help to keep the people into their brand.
Right, okay. And now, Ken, sometimes I see dealerships, in the newspaper, they're offering the loyalty. So can you explain how the loyalty works?
Well, they've got different loyalties. If you currently own that brand of vehicle, you might get a loyalty, but then they also have Conquest. So if you're selling a Ford, but yet you want to bring in the Nissan customers, then you give a Conquest as far as if they own a different brand to bring them into your brand as well. So there's two different type of loyalty rebates.
Okay. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about, budgeting, and you were telling me 15 to 18%, which gives them an idea to figure things out. Does a financing person have to qualify them? You were saying yes, correct?
Yes. They're
going to sit down, and what do they go through? They go through the credit report. Do they have to actually, like with a mortgage, for example, they have to bring in documents to say, this is what I really make? Otherwise, how would, they could come in and say, I'm making whatever I want. And then you'd have, it's like getting those mortgages that were, we call them liar's loans. People just made up the numbers.
Once again, people with challenge credit's going to have to produce things like pay stubs, proof of residence, things like that. People with real good credit, many times they just get approved without having to produce anything.
Okay. How many times on average, excuse me, does a financing person submit the consumer's application to different lenders? Because I'm a credit consultant, so I want to hear your answers on that.
Typically, a good finance department is going to know which banks to use. They might go to 2 or 3 different banks just to get the best rate for them. You've got some dealers out there that are kind of in that gray area that will shop around 15, 20 different banks, and that kind of hurts somebody.
Right, and I can tell you each time you pull credit, it's 2 to 5 points off your score. So I'll share with you a little story about how when I went to purchase my car, I actually pulled my scores through myfico.com to get an idea of what my FICO scores were. Now, there are different types of FICO scores depending upon the purpose. Mortgage companies use a FICO score that's different than an insurance company, that's different than a car lender. But when I went into the financing person, I said, here's my FICO report, pull my credit one time, and give me whatever the best deal is. There are situations where I've had clients call me up and say, oh my gosh, this company pulled my credit 10 to 15 times. And it's just such a tremendous hit. So I think you have to be aware, if you're dealing with someone reputable, they really shouldn't have to pull it more than 2 to 3 times, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, we were talking about the dealers offering, lending through their own banks. But you're saying it's not higher, correct? It is competitive.
Oh, sure. It's very competitive. Many dealers, our dealership uses several different lending institutions and they could pretty match any rate that the customer can get at their bank.
So do they match rates? If somebody comes in, if I went to the bank and they said, hey, we're going to give you 3%, and I brought in that deal to a dealership, will most of them match that, even based upon the credit? Is there any negotiation in that type of financing?
Well, based upon the credit, of course, it's going to have to be in line with the rate that they can get. However, if you come to a reputable dealership, they'll be able to make it a one-stop opportunity for you, so you don't have to go all over the place to a car dealership, to an insurance company, to a bank. Make it one stop, easier. This way, the customer has a much more enjoyable buying experience.
All right, now you mentioned 2 keywords there, reputable dealership. I'd like each of you to give me your definition of reputable dealership, because over the years there have been a lot of disreputable dealerships, not necessarily the larger companies, but these companies that pop up and have the used car lots. So what advice would you each give to somebody who is looking for a reputable car dealership?
Well, dealerships that are a branded dealership, a new car dealership, also sells used cars. Many times they're certified vehicles as well. I would suggest that a customer go check out something like dealerrater.com and see what the dealer's rating is as far as the consumers are concerned who've been to that dealership, and rate that dealership. Unlike a little used car lot, we have to keep a certain score to present to the manufacturer to be able to stay in business and keep good faith with the manufacturer. So, of course, a dealership like ours has to be reputable, has to treat the customer right, has to get the good surveys and good reviews.
Okay, and Ken, what advice would you offer?
The biggest thing is you want a dealer that's going to be transparent, that wants to show you everything. Have they won awards, President's Award, whatever it may be that the manufacturer gives them, Dealer Rater, different review sites. You just want to look into everything about the dealership before you go into it. You just don't want to drive by one and just shoot in there. You want to know about the dealership.
What about those customer service surveys? Who does them, and how do you find out the results? And how does the dealership find out the results? How does the consumer find out the results?
A lot of things are posted on different sites, whether it's going to be, like you said, Dealer Rater. Maybe it's going to be Google. Facebook is the big one. A lot of people are leaving reviews everywhere across the web that you can actually go out and you can get all that information. And then the manufacturer, they're not going to post all their surveys, but they are going to post President's Award, whatever awards that are out there that the dealer has earned by being a good dealership and a good place to do business at. Okay.
Now, you hear about dealers promoting rebates, discounts, and special prices for incentives, and we just touched on that lightly. Can you explain? I'll start with you, Ken. Explain to me, what is a rebate? What is a dealer rebate?
The rebate is going to be the money that the dealer's going to give you in order to buy their product, whether it's going to be $500, $1,000. It could be multiple rebates. You might go into a dealership and you are entitled to 4 or 5 different rebates, but depending if you finance it with them, maybe you only get 3. If you don't finance with them, they'll take away or add different rebates as well.
Now, does the dealer tell you what the rebates are, or is that something you have to kind of look up for yourself, online?
You should look it up yourself, but the dealer is going to tell you what all you are entitled to as well. But you may miss something. There may be a conquest rebate, or maybe you got a rebate in the mail, you thought it was junk mail, you threw it away, and the dealership can tell you that you actually are entitled to more rebates.
I gotcha. Okay. Now, Ed, what other discounts or special prices should people know about or know how to find out about? What else?
Well, of course, trade-in values come into play. I know rebates, of course, come from manufacturers. Discounts come from the dealership.
Okay, so that you can qualify possibly for both.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. What other advice would each of you give to somebody that's looking to purchase a car?
Well, first of all, you need to find the right dealership, get your information together, find out what type of car you're looking for, get an idea what kind of budget you have. Then you need to find the right dealership for you.
Great.
Dealership that's going to treat you right, that you're going to be satisfied with. And then, of course, the salesperson has to be able to be the right person to be able to deal with for you, take care of you, and treat you the right way.
I think that's important. And Ken, I'll ask you the same question when we come back from this commercial break.
Time after time, I've done my sentence, but committed no crime.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health.
Hello, I'm Jim Velasquez. Does getting a lousy 1% on your CDs make you sick to your stomach? Inflation is hovering at 3%, so what's really happening? Allow me, Jim Velasquez, to send you my free report. If you haven't reviewed your CDs in a while, don't get this report. It will break your heart. If you want to fight back and beat the bank, text RETIRE to 72727 for this free report. Let's beat the bank. Text RETIRE to 72727 for your free report.
Consumers, do you have bad credit? Can't purchase a house or car? Paying too much in interest on your credit cards and loans? Scammed by credit repair companies? There is hope. You can get back on track and do it the right way. Call Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Or go to crediteducationconsultants.com now and get the help you need. Don't delay. Call today. Mortgage reps and realtor inquiries are also welcomed.
I've paid my dues, time after time.
Welcome back to the Half Empty, Half Full Talk radio show. I've been speaking with Ken Bruning. He is the General Sales Manager of the Ford and Mitsubishi of Port Richey. And Ed Sobolow, right, he's a sales consultant with Wesley Chapel Nissan. And what we're trying to get across today is what you should know about purchasing a car, doing your due diligence. We've talked a little bit about financing. Ken, we kind of left off in the last segment as far as what advice would you have to somebody that's looking to purchase a car?
Well, these days with the internet and everything, you don't need to go to 25 different dealerships. Most people are only going to 1.3 dealerships, therefore they're doing a lot more research online. So you can do all your research online, you can look at reviews on the dealership before you go to that dealership, and then it will better eliminate you just shopping around in the blind. Okay,
good advice. Now, I remember, and again, this is going back, not recently, but going back years ago, being a woman, I would never walk into a dealership by myself. I either had my dad, I had, a boyfriend with me, because I felt way back, we're talking 80s here, 90s here, as a woman, I would walk in and go by myself and think, they're just coming for me. You know, they're saying, oh, there she is. She's a girl, and we're going to get the most amount of money that we can. I'm not your regular person. I think both you guys know that. I do a lot of due diligence. But even though I did my due diligence, I was aware at that time that I felt they were going for the most amount of money and that they wouldn't negotiate because I was a woman. How would you each say over the past maybe 20 years things have changed? Because I know now if I walk in, I feel a lot more comfortable. But what changed within buying cars in that industry in the last 20 years?
Well, Lori, you're absolutely right. I mean, many years ago, I know for a fact that, women were treated differently. It was a guy's industry, and, that's who generally used to go out and buy the cars. But things have changed, and most sales consultants, most dealerships are totally aware of that over 50% of the buying decisions come from the female. So most sales consultants direct everything to the female and be able to treat her the same way or properly, like you're buying the car. There's no difference there. I mean, it's not that type of business where a car salesman these days, if a female comes in, just going to show you where the vanity mirrors are.
Ken, anything? You made me laugh. Anything to add to that?
Times have really changed that the government is actually stepping in now. So if you go out and you take advantage of a woman or elderly person, there's actually laws against that now. So there needs to be a common ground. You can't make $10,000 off of somebody unless you're doing it across the board. So they need to be making the same amount on every single person. Everybody's going to make a little bit of profit, but they just can't get carried away with it.
Now, are there more women salespeople in auto dealerships than there used to be? Has that changed? And does that help if a woman comes in and says, hey, I want to deal with a woman?
Typically it's harder for a woman to sell a car. You might find 2 or 3 at a dealership, but it's not going to be like a 50-50 split. So it's really not going to be something that you're going to just go out there and look for that extra woman to be selling you the car. You really need to rely on everybody else in the dealership and then the laws that are in place to protect everybody.
Gotcha. Now, Ed, you made an interesting comment. When a family comes in, do you guys find yourself gearing it to both or maybe to can you tell who the decision maker is? Typically, I mean, I would think, here's how I think. If it was a family coming in, I'd probably gear it to the woman because if she's driving the vehicle, then she's really the one who's making that purchase. Thoughts?
If a family comes in, it's generally a dual decision of how they're going to handle this and what vehicle. As far as the vehicle that they want, though, is probably going to be the woman's decision because they may be in here looking for a vehicle to be able to take the kids to and from everything, which many times the woman does more so than the guy does. But you have to gear it to everybody. You have to pay attention to everybody, even the kids. I look to find out if the kids are comfortable in the car.
Gotcha. You're right. And now, Ken, I'm going to throw you for a loop here. I have big dogs. I see advertisements now for vehicles that promote they have options for dogs. Is that something that you see a lot of?
That's actually getting to be pretty common now. The headroom in a car used to be really small. Now they're gearing everything for even larger people or animals. They're making things that are easier for animals to get in and out of. Instead of having a big, huge lip on the back trunk, it's actually more level with the bumper, so it's easier for them to load or to put an animal in or anything like that.
All right. Things are kind of going a long way from years ago. Now, I want to talk a little bit about actually, purchasing the car. And I'll give it to you from the consumer standpoint because I purchased a car a couple of years ago. It seems to me that most car salespeople generally start out by asking, what's the monthly payment? And I know, Ken, you said the 15 to 18% gives you an idea of that. I was brought up that just like with any other large purchase, you actually negotiate out the total price of whatever it is that you're purchasing. And then as long as those monthly payments fit in, is there an advantage or disadvantage to doing that if you know that it's the 15 to 18%?
Really what you want to do is you want to negotiate the price, then negotiate the trade, and then if you educate yourself on the payment, $20 per thousand, you're going to pretty much know $20,000 car that you're going to be paying $400 a month. So you need to have the education to go in there. Therefore, you're negotiating the aspect of the deal instead of the whole deal. If you negotiate the whole deal, you may not be getting the best decision or the best price across the board.
All right. Now, Let's talk about the markup on used cars, because my understanding is the markup on used cars, it's significantly higher than on new cars. Why is that? And I'll start with you, Ed. Why is it higher?
Well, used cars generally can sell for more money because of the more of a profit margin, because new cars, profit margins on many new cars are very low these days.
Okay.
Throughout the years, if people have noticed, MSRPs of cars are very similar or have not increased as much as they used to in the years gone by. That's because they've decreased the margin of between the dealer cost and the MSRP of the car, lowering the dealer profit. So you can make some more money on used cars, but that's not necessarily the case, because if a used car is sitting around for a while, they've decreased in value while they're sitting on the lot.
Okay.
So the profit margin is going to be lower there. Sometimes there's a car that we just have to move. It's time to go away. You can get a great deal on a car like that.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to ask Ken, do certain vehicles hold their resale value better than others?
Some do. You know, it all depends how saturated the market is. If the market's really saturated, like right now, you've got a body change on like a Mustang. So now the old body style is really going to get saturated because everybody wants to upgrade to that newer technology. So if you have an abundance of one vehicle or one model out there, that can actually drive the prices down to where your vehicle's not going to be worth as much. But if it's a smaller, you know, maybe they only made 10 or 15,000 of them, then of course that value is going to go up.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, you know, I hear Carfax. Tell me about Carfax, and is it a legitimate and accurate service?
Carfax is as accurate as a person inputting the information. So if you go in and get an oil change and they report it to Carfax and it has 20,300 miles and the dealership actually put in 20,100 miles, it could be a red flag, because now the miles are not actual miles, because before maybe you had something else done and miles were reported then as well.
Okay, now if a vehicle was in an accident and somehow it wasn't reported to insurance, would that still show up on the Carfax?
No, it will not. It has to actually go through and be reported. So that insurance company is actually going to be reporting it. You may have somebody that had a police report and had it reported then, but you're not going to know about the damage because maybe it wasn't towed away or it was still able to be driven, therefore the damage wasn't that much. So you really have to read it line by line to see what was going on with it.
All right, very good. When I researched cars, I used different resources. So I want to talk a little bit about those resources. So I'll start with you, Ed. Consumer Reports. My father made me go out and buy Consumer Reports before I bought my car. And I had to read. I'm telling you, at one point I knew every car that was in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. I pretty much knew how everything rated. My other half, we'd be driving down the street and I'd be looking at all the cars and giving all the statistics. Now, fortunately, I've forgotten all that once I bought the car. How important are some of these resources like Consumer Reports, Edmunds, the Kelley Blue Book, True Market, Auto Trader, eBay Motors? That's what I've read are some of the good resources. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Consumer Reports because, of course, before the Internet, that's what people used to use. People used to come in with the book in the hand, and it gave them all the invoice prices and all that. Most of the time, the invoice prices were off. A lot of times, they didn't include the freight charges and so forth and so on in the pricing of the vehicle. But now, with the Internet and all that, you can get prices. You can go to Edmunds, KBB, True Market Value, get MSRPs of cars that are different than each other in different ones, because they might be off. Not MSRPs, invoice prices, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But some of these services like True Market Value, hey, you're going to get a great price if you're going to go to something like that. And as long as you qualify for all the rebates and everything that are involved, choose the dealer that you want to deal with, come on in and buy a car.
All right. Anything to add to that, Ken?
Basically the research out there, there's just so many different things. It all depends. Is somebody looking for safety? Are they looking for space inside of it? So they can research every aspect of the car. That way when they go in, they know exactly what they want. Do they want a compact that's got a little bit more headroom? What vehicles to look for? Sporty, what vehicles to look for? So you can dive a little bit deeper and know exactly what you're going to want.
Okay. Let's talk about internet marketing. When somebody wants to purchase a car, if I want to purchase a car, I can do what? I can contact the internet marketing person at a different company, I'm assuming online, and say, what's your best deal? And then I can go to 2 or 3 other dealerships and say, well, this dealership gave me this. What are you going to give me? And go back and forth. Give me how it actually works for a consumer if they want to do it. Because I know, it's not all about price. It's about getting a good and fair deal. And also it's about the customer service, which people forget about. When you purchase a car, you want to know that you can count on that person, your salesperson and your service team, to back everything up as compared to maybe the smaller mom and pops. And I'm not saying that they're all bad, but we're going to take a quick break. I want to come back and then we're going to jump in with that. So hang in there.
Time after time, I've done my sentence, but committed no crime.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health. Consumers, do you have bad credit? Can't purchase a house or car? Paying too much in interest on your credit cards and loans? Scammed by credit repair companies? There is hope. You can get back on track and do it the right way. Call Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Or go to crediteducationconsultants.com now and get the help you need. Don't delay. Call today. Mortgage reps and realtor inquiries are also welcomed.
I've paid my dues, time after time.
And welcome back to the Half Empty, Half Full Talk radio show. I want to jump back into with you, Ken, and we were talking about sources that were good, but we were also talking about internet quotes and how it works. So give me your definition of, how, I'm a consumer. How does it work?
Basically, you're going to go on to maybe the OEM site, and then you're going to submit a lead. That lead is going to get farmed out to different dealerships, and then the dealerships are going to contact you back. Typically, the first one to contact you is the one that's going to be able to give you most of that information. A lot of people don't wait to hear from the 5th, 6th, 7th person. Once they start communication and then they trust somebody, they're going to continue communicating with them. They may shop their rates against somebody else, but typically you're building that rapport in the beginning.
Okay, now that's where I think the rankings we were talking about of customer service, I want to just hit on that, are important because, as I was mentioning, if you don't have somebody that makes you feel safe when you purchase your car and they let you down and there's no service, that's I think the reason everybody has surveys now. I know I get surveys all the time. I actually answer the surveys. I don't think a lot of people do, but I think it's fair because I have a sales background and hey, I want to know, did I measure up to what you wanted me to measure up to? So I think the same thing is important. People come in and they want just the best price. What's your best deal? If I can't have it for this, I'm going to walk out. But they don't realize that if they don't have the team, the company to stand behind them, right? And what would you guys say to that?
Well, of course, that's a very, very important thing to do. I mean, if you come to our dealership, you're going to get a lifetime warranty. You're going to get all your oil changes done for $9.95 for as long as you own the car. You're going to get a group of people all the way up to my general manager and the owner of the dealership who want to make you part of the family. And that's the type of atmosphere you really want to be in. I mean, rather than going from one dealer to another and beating heads for $100 here, $100 there, it's not always the money that makes the difference in your customer satisfaction.
Right. Well, let me ask you, Ken, when you hire salespeople, because you're a sales manager, must they meet certain criteria in your book to represent the company?
Most definitely. We're going to do an extensive background check. We want to make sure that, the past 15, 20 years, they haven't done something illegal or dishonest. Also, with drugs, you want to make sure that nobody is doing drugs or prescription pills or anything like that. So you want a good, ethical person that's going to represent you.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about trade-ins. Should consumers negotiate the cost of the car that they want first and then the trade-in? What's the best way to do that?
It's really a package. If you're going to trade in a car, it's a package deal. Okay, so many people think that they need to negotiate the price of the car first and they're going to negotiate the trade. Look, if you want to buy a car for retail price, I can give you close to retail for your trade-in. If you want to buy a car for wholesale price, then I'm going to give you wholesale for your car.
All right, well, I can't remember the dealership, but somebody was running something on the radio where it said, we'll give you $7,000 towards the purchase of a vehicle. It was so outrageous, the claim of giving you the $7,000. Well, they always have the little tiny disclaimers that you can never hear at the end. How can somebody offer $7,000 when it sounds like it's every vehicle? Is it because there are the disclaimers and it's really a bait and switch?
Well, what they're doing is they're taking the rebates and discounts. They're taking everything and putting it on the trade. So if there is, say, $1,000 in markup and then you have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in rebates, they're going to lump all that together. They're going to put it on the trade, and they're going to show you a different value. So what you want to do is you want to know the actual trade value. So the actual trade value is not going to be inflated. It's going to be is what it is. I would give you cash for that car on that price, but I'm not going to give you cash on the $7,000 inflated price.
I gotcha. Okay. Now, should a consumer try to sell their own vehicle first? Because when I went to try to sell my own vehicle first, I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to then take strangers in my car, and I'm not going to let somebody drive my car without me in it. But that could be dangerous because you don't know who you're getting into with the car. That was my thought, the safety factor. Ed, what do you think? Should somebody try and sell their own car? I've read they get a higher price, but is it worth the risk?
These days, I don't think it is, especially if you go, through some of these internet things. You never know who you're going to run into. It's very time-consuming for you. Besides the fact that when you trade in a car, you're actually saving taxes because you're only paying taxes on the trade-in difference between the two vehicles.
Okay.
If you sell your car, some people think, hey, I got $1,000 more because I sold my car outside. But guess what? You just lost $1,200 in taxes.
I gotcha. Okay. Ken, lemon law. What do you know about the lemon law?
The lemon law is to protect the consumer. If an item breaks, maybe it's the wiper blades, they break 3 times in the first 2 years of ownership, then you can go arbitration and start the lemon law process. It's just to protect the consumer that nothing was wrong with that vehicle. One item keeps breaking over and over again, then you might have a problem, and then you would start the lemon law process.
Okay, so what happens in the actual process? You said you're going to arbitration. Does the consumer typically get a new vehicle if the arbitrator determines that there was a problem? And the other part of that question is, if they can't drive the vehicle, does the dealership give them another vehicle if it's questionable?
Well, the dealership is out of the loop. You're with the manufacturer, so it's whatever the manufacturer is going to state. They may offer you, I'll buy back the vehicle less 10, 12 cents a mile. I'll trade you out of the vehicle and I'll give you another vehicle. So now they're just doing a swap of collateral where it doesn't cost you anything. You get a new vehicle, they take the old vehicle. So they're going to give you different options. You don't have to lemon law a vehicle and stick with that manufacturer, though. So if you don't like them after that, then you can get your money back and go someplace else.
Do either of you have any idea how many defective vehicles are produced, a year? Is that something that's a common problem in a dealership when you sell a vehicle? The reason I ask that is, and I spoke to you a little bit on the break, Ed, I had a Dodge Shelby Charger back in the 80s. I loved that car. But I can tell you, I did not make a wise decision when I bought it as much as I loved it, because on the test drive, it actually broke down. And the dealer had to come and get me. And we figured, well, it's a one-shot thing. It was under a warranty, and they actually did take care of it. I had that car for many years, but my mechanic over the years told me that there was some problem with the engine. And eventually, after probably about 80, 90,000 miles, that car blew up and it wasn't worth fixing. And I don't remember at that point if there really was any type of lemon law. So what would you say? What advice would you give?
Cars of yesteryear doesn't stack up to what cars are built today. Today, many cars are built by robots. They're built in a way that they're not going to break down as much as what cars used to do. Plus, you have factory warranties that are backing you up with the whole thing with that.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Warranties. What, Ken, does your dealership offer in terms of warranties? And is it a standard Ford and Mitsubishi warranty all across the nation?
Every manufacturer is going to be different. My
Okay.
Mitsubishi is a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain and a 560 bumper-to-bumper. And then Ford is 560 powertrain and 3 or 36 bumper-to-bumper. So every manufacturer is going to be different. And it all depends on, Chevrolet years ago, they changed their powertrain just because they were having a little bit more problems. Therefore, they wanted reassurance for everybody. So it all depends what's going on in the market to what that manufacturer might offer.
Gotcha. Okay, Ed, your turn.
Your warranties from Nissan, a 3-year, 36,000-mile bumper-to-bumper and 5-year, 60,000-mile on the powertrain. And over at our dealership, you get a lifetime powertrain warranty when you buy a car for as long as you own that car.
Okay.
So you're pretty well protected there.
All right, it's much different than it was years ago. What about recalls on cars? How common is that? Is it, certain models are more prone to it? What happens, Ken, in a recall? Does typically the consumer get some type of a notification where they have to bring it in and then the dealership pays too, or the manufacturer pays if the car was recalled?
Well, it's actually several different things, like you were talking about Carfax before. Carfax actually will put out the recalls on a vehicle, so when you go to get your oil change or anything, they pull a Carfax on it, and it will tell them that they have a recall. And then there's also bulletins. Ford may send out a bulletin that they're having problems with something, so you can come in and get it checked out before something happens in a recall. So a lot of manufacturers are going to be proactive to actually make sure there's not as many recalls with more bulletins and notifying the consumer that there could be a problem.
Gotcha. Now, do most companies offer a warranty on the vehicle after the standard warranty runs out, and is it competitive with other aftermarket, programs that you could purchase separately?
That's actually mandated by the state. So aftermarket warranties are actually, Florida will dictate exactly what you can sell it for, what the cost is and everything. So it's going to be a level playing field across for everybody.
Anything to add to that, Ed?
The wraparound service contracts are an excellent thing to be able to have on your vehicle, because if your air conditioner breaks, it's still going to be covered. But of course, it's also going to depend on how long you intend to keep that vehicle. Many times if you're leasing it, that's another advantage. Sometimes leasing it, you don't need to have a long service contract, so you could save some money there as well.
Do most cars, will they run past 100,000 miles nowadays if you service them properly? They're designed because
They
years
certainly
ago.
will. I've seen quite a few cars, Nissans and other manufacturers, 300,000 some odd miles, original engines and transmissions.
Pretty good, pretty good. Makes me think of my AMC Hornet from the 1970s I was telling you guys about on the break that just fell apart as I drove it. Well, I want to thank both of you for being with me today. Ed, give out your contact information, phone number, website.
Okay, my name is Ed Sobolow. I'm with Wesley Chapel Nissan, Wesley Chapel, Florida. My email is edsobolow@gmail.com. My cell number is 813-766-1511. Give me a call. You have a terrific experience over at our dealership.
Great, thanks. And Ken?
I'm with Ford and Mitsubishi of Port Richey. My email is yourautofriend@gmail.com. My cell phone is 727-742-1106. Should you ever have any questions or concerns, I'm always there to answer them, even if you don't buy a vehicle from myself.
Great. Thank you very much for joining me. And join us every week for a new Half Empty, Half Full Talk radio show. Learn something new every week and get smarter faster. Be safe.